Welcome back to my channel. Have you ever wondered how those common JavaScript methods like map, concat, filter work? In this video we will rebuild filter from scratch with jest and test-driven development. Now in this project I already initialized a package.json and I have installed jest and its types that will give us a nice autocomplete in the editor. Now let me configure jest here for testing. So we will pass the jest binary here alongside with the watch whole flag that will run our tests anytime there is a new change on the file. Okay, let's give it a shot. np with npm test, and of course no tests found, so let's create a new folder here named __tests __. Now jest will look in this folder for new tests to run. You can change this behavior by configuring jest, but for now we're good with this scheme. Now since we want to rebuild filter from scratch, let's create a new file named filterspec.js, and in this file we will create the actual test. A jest test starts with a describe block where you describe what you want to test. The describe block takes a callback, usually we pass an arrow function, which is more convenient, and in this describe block you can create another block named test where you write the actual test case that you want to run. So for example, we can say that it filters an array of numbers. Now this block takes also a callback. Now you should know that the original filter function in JavaScript works on the array. So for example, if we say that we have an actual array with numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we want to remove those numbers that are less than 4, for example, we can expect that if I run actual.filter, I get a new array that is made of 4, 5, and 6. So in jest we can use expect, which takes the function which takes the actual thing that you want to test, and on the right side you can use a number of methods for testing the output. In this case we want to check that the actual function that we run is equal to the expected output. Here is actual.filter, which is the filter method that we want to create from scratch. As you might know, the filter function takes a callback. We can pass an arrow function here, and we can say that this filter function should remove all those numbers that are less than 4, for example. So we say to filter, give me all those numbers that are greater than 5, and all these numbers will be removed. Or we can also say, give me all those numbers that are equal or greater than 4. If we run this code, we can see that the test is indeed passing because the actual filter function, the original function, is present inside JavaScript. So what we want to do is to create our own implementation of filter, where this filter function is defined. We know that any built-in JavaScript object has a prototype object attached to it. Any new object created from that built-in, like object or array or number, has the same method attached that are defined on the prototype. So when we create an array with a literal form, what we do in reality, the engine does this for us, is to create a new array with the new constructor. This is completely hidden from the developer. When you create an array in JavaScript, usually you use the literal form. Whenever you can, avoid this new array. But what the engine does under the hood is to take your array and wrap that array in an object. That means that on this new array object, we have access to filter, concat, push, map, and so on. Now that we know that any built-in object in JavaScript has this prototype, we also know that if I call any method on this prototype, that is the origin of this method. So we say that filter, concat, push, map are defined on the prototype of that type of object. That means that we can overwrite the original method. Now, keep in mind that this is just an exercise. Don't ever touch the prototype of any built-in object in JavaScript. Don't. But for now, we can just overwrite our original filter. And what if we assign null? The test is going to fail as expected, and now we can implement our filter function. Now, the filter function, from its signature, we can see that takes a callback. So we can say filter function. This filter function, we know that works on any element of the array that the main filter is applied. So if we have an array with numbers and we call filter on that array, the filter function is this filter, but the callback filter function is this one. So we can see that we need to loop over the original array and apply that filter function on any element of that array. Now, where do we take the original array? When an object is created with a new constructor, this is always pointing to that object. That means that if we access this in this function, this will be our array. We also know from the documentation for filter that filter returns a new array. With this information, we can start thinking to write a new array here, const filtered, that will be returned to the outside. And we need to apply filter function on each element of the array. We also know that for looping over an array, we can use for. We can also use for each or whatever, but since we are creating this function from scratch, let's stick with the classic form of looping. So we know that we can use a for loop on this array. And it means that here we can loop over the length of the array with this dot length, because again, this is the actual array that we're looping over. And inside this loop, we can apply the filter function, the callback filter function on each element of the array. So if the filter function filters out the elements depending on the test that we pass to that function, we can say that each element in this array by index, if that test is true, this could be an if statement or a ternary. If this condition is true, then push on the new array the element. Else, do nothing or return false, for example. And with this code, the test is already passing. We can also write another test here. So we say that it filters an array of letters, and this could be A, B, C, and here we expect, for example, that if the filter function must return any element that is equal to See, we can expect in this array that the result will be C. Let's save the file and let's see what we got. Here we go, 2 tests are passing indeed. So we filtered an array of numbers and an array of letters. So this is a nice exercise that you can apply to any JavaScript method that you want to rebuild from scratch, that you want to replicate. And this is an actual interview question. Now you know that if you want to rebuild that method from scratch, you can put that method on the prototype of the original built-in object. Before saying goodbye, again, never ever do this in production. Don't never ever overwrite a built-in JavaScript method. It's also good practice to not add any new method that you can think of on the prototype of this built-in object. Stay tuned on this channel for the next episodes. Goodbye.